All right, welcome back for part two of our field practicum orientation. This video will focus primarily on assignments and kind of just some like logistics of how to make this run smoothly. So here's what we have. So we have different assignments that are attached to the whole field practicum experience, and they are completed during their field practicum seminar. So that's the hour a week that they meet with me. Excuse me, that the students meet with me. So these are assignments that will be utilized in class, but are also um, based into their internship placement. And so it's kind of the marriage of the two. So the biggest one, and I'm going to go into more detail on this one in the upcoming slides, is the learning contract and evaluation. This is where students create kind of their learning plan, identifying the different learning activities that they're going to do to meet competencies. So I'm going to go into further depth with that because that's kind of the primary assignment. So you can look forward to that in the next slide. We have the students complete an implicit bias training. That's something that's done during the fall semester. So kind of exploring their biases and understanding deeper what implicit biases are and kind of how to mitigate them. We asked them to complete an agency analysis paper. That is kind of the end assignment for the fall semester. It's really focusing on kind of the macro workings of agencies, so students will have to analyze and get information about kind of the big picture of their agencies. So they'll probably utilize their supervisors and might need some help if they have questions about that. They also are writing practicum journals, so weekly they have to submit reflections on kind of how their week went, what they've learned, what they're struggling with. They are submitted to me. They're welcome to submit them to their supervisors. It's not something that's required, that I require. They do share it with me, and it gives me a good kind of gauge where things are at, where the students' heads are at, if there's any concerning things that I should be aware of. So it's a good check and balance for me, but also a good chance for the students to process kind of what is happening in their settings and kind of how they're processing it and navigating through it. I'm going to skip to number 6 because it's another fall one. They have to find a research article that is tied into the population they're working with, and then they present that to their classmates and kind of help educate and show the importance of research within social work. So those are all the fall ones. For students who are doing their block placement, those ones are going to be due during the first half of the semester. And then for the winter semester, we'll be having an ongoing learning contract. They'll still be doing journals. We kind of transition them down to monthly, but they're still reflecting in their journals. They will have to do a case study where they identify an individual at their internship. Obviously, they protect confidentiality, change enough details where it's still protecting privacy. But then they present to the class how they engaged with this client through the stages of the generalist change process. So kind of applying that model we've utilized throughout their education onto an actual real life scenario. And then they also do what we call the resource show and tell. So they identify a resource that they have learned at their agency and then share it with the class to kind of help build each other's toolkits of resources either in the community or if it's a handout, or if it's really kind of open-ended, but it's a good way for students to start identifying evidence-based interventions and how to find resources in the community for their clients. So those are the practicum assignments. Again, block placement students do have to complete all of these in one semester, but I have a timeline of when those are done. For students who are doing them in 2 semesters, they are broken up between fall assignments and winter assignments. Actually, by winter, I actually should be saying spring. We changed it to spring semester, not winter semester, but January through April. All right, our learning contract and evaluation. And so if anyone has had a BSW or an MSW intern before, learning contracts are should be a familiar tool. They're kind of the building block of the practicum experience. And it ends up driving the activities that students do and kind of make the connection back to these core competencies we're trying to have the students demonstrate by the end of their social work education. So really it's kind of articulating the activities that support the CSWE, so that's the Council of Social Work Education. They're our accrediting body. The activities support their competencies, it's showing the school, it's matching what the school's been teaching them, and it's a reflection of really what the student has accomplished during their time in their field practicum. It's giving students and supervisors measurable activities that students can do. Again, mirroring back to the competencies that CSWE has established, it's like we're making goal setting, like the SMART goals, as you have the competency and what are we doing to demonstrate that we have mastered this competency. It is a level of accountability between the supervisor internships, like with the student saying like, hey, this is what I'm agreeing to do. This is also the opportunities that I'm providing for you. And so we don't want to get to a point in this semester where students haven't really engaged fully in good social work activities. And so it helps keep agencies accountable to making sure that students are engaging in purposeful work, but it's also keeping the students accountable for like, hey, I'm here to do something, I'm here to learn and grow and help the agency. This is like what I'm accountable for as well. It helps define the boundaries for what is possible. So again, making sure students are getting a good learning experience, but also not giving them activities that are out of the scope of an intern role. So it's just kind of setting parameters. And then it gives an evaluation tool. So we do a midterm evaluation and we do a final evaluation with the learning contract. So it just kind of can show the students areas that they have grown in, done well in, and ways they can continue to push themselves to grow. So it's a celebration and it's an encouragement for growth. I have now thrown out the CSWE a couple times. They are our accrediting body. One of their tenets is having competency-based education, and so we're focusing on those outcomes of learning versus not just learning, but also doing. And so these competencies are areas that are identified that we want to see students doing, not just learning about. And so it kind of helps it just helps prepare them for the workforce because you already have moved from taking this head knowledge into practice knowledge. So it kind of gives us parameters on what we want our students to be able to demonstrate and be able to master upon graduation. So this is a little bit of the framework for learning contracts. I do spend time in seminar with the students going over how to create learning contracts, but just for context's sake, we have the competencies, which are defined by the CSWE. So those are the most broad. These are what we want to achieve. And then the CSWE also identifies the behavior that's associated. So this is saying this is how we're going to achieve this big competency. The area where the students and then supervisors kind of partner together is to find a learning activity that shows how the action steps of being able to achieve the behavior, which then in turn shows the competency. So I'm going to pull up our learning contract just so you can see the format. So every school has probably something in the same vein, but they all look a little bit different. And I will say ours often feels and looks very cumbersome. It's just something that I'm always trying to figure out how to make it more user-friendly because sometimes it just feels bulky. But you can see we have the scoring where we're looking at for the ratings. And this is kind of what the framework or the format looks like. And also my computer is being very glitchy. Okay, so we have our competency that is given by the CSWE. So competency 1 is demonstrate ethical and professional behavior. The practice behaviors they've assigned as well. So these are what we want to see. We want to see the students doing. And then in this section, this is where students are coming up with the action steps to demonstrate the behavior, which then in turn meets the competency. So this section right here, I'll be working with students will be working with supervisors to figure out what are valid and purposeful learning activities to show this. We want them to be measurable. Students are familiar with SMART goals, making sure things are measurable, time sensitive, realistic, all those fun things that I apparently cannot spew off the top of my head. So they'll be working on that with me and in tandem with you. Then when I come at the end of first semester, the supervisors will provide evaluation on them, give them the overall rating at the midterm, and then come second semester, students don't have to create a brand new learning contract. They just have to fine tune it, making them a little bit more specific to the skills that they are mastering. And then the supervisors will give them the final rating of final competency rating. There we go. All right. So that is the framework for learning contracts. I kind of just went over this a little bit. I do have resources that I will share with students to kind of help you wrap your head around the whole thing. One thing I do want to point out is that the CSWE does determine 9 competencies. Kuiper adds a 10th that's focused on incorporating a biblical reformed worldview. It's kind of the fundamental framework for Kuiper. So we do add that one in. So there are 10 competencies. That kind of makes us unique. I'm pretty sure I've already went over all of this. The one thing I do like to point out, and I do try to coach my students around, but also I want to kind of just throw this out to supervisors. I think it's really helpful at the midterm for students not to receive the highest score possible, so scoring a 10. I think that's a reasonable expectation to set for students because they haven't mastered everything completely yet. The midpoint is still kind of that growing process. I struggled with that when I was in my master's program. I went to my midterm evaluation and I was, expecting thought I did really well, so I was going to get the highest score possible, but I received very, not low, but mid scores, and it really took me aback because I was like, oh my gosh, I thought I was doing good. But my supervisor went on to explain, she goes, this isn't a bad score, this is meant to show you have room to grow because you legitimately do. You're not doing bad, but you still have room for growth. So I think giving students realistic scoring on evaluation does help them show areas of growth if possible. It does not impact their grade necessarily. Their grades are based more on, are you doing everything you're supposed to be doing and showing up for your classes? So I also don't want supervisors, or showing up for classes and for your hours, I don't want supervisors to feel like they have to give a 10 in order for a student to get an A. That is not the case. I weigh other factors, and I didn't. So just use this evaluation tool as whatever way you think is beneficial, but I do talk to students about if you don't get a perfect grade, it does not mean that you have done bad. You just have room for growth, which is expected for interns. I mentioned second semester, it's the same learning contract with just enhanced learning activities. And then I come back and we do the end of the year evaluation as well. Things to note with oops, I lost my picture again. Things to note with learning contracts, just a couple things. When supervisors are signing off, I do need your name and, excuse me, your credentials. There has to be an MSW or BSW signature on all documentation. That's a piece of our, I'm so sorry, our accreditation process. So I will be looking for those, and I do need those on there. The learning contract should reflect the needs and interests of your specific student, specific to your setting. I think this is where some of the pain and the angst comes with this contract, is because it is not a one-size-fits-all. We have a general template, and each agency is going to have a different iteration in a sense of how those are going to look in their setting, and so I can't just be like, here's what you have to do. It does take some creative thinking. It takes some synthesizing of being like, well, this is what the competency means. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how they meld together. So I do a lot of work with the students because it does sometimes stretch our brains a little bit, and it's kind of a little bit painful at times. But we acknowledge that every agency is different, so it's going to look different for every learning contract specific to the student. And it is a working document. Students have a due date of when it has to be filled in, but the students and yourself are welcome to modify and change objectives at any time because things happen, new opportunities come up. Some opportunities might not follow through, might lose funding, or clients drop out of a program. So we understand the nature of social work and that it is a working document and should just be modified as needed. All right. So we're going to do a final video on time cards, and